I'm here today to talk about religion. Religion is fascinating, but it's also perplexing. All you have to do is read the daily news, and you'll realize that religion is involved in a lot of conflict. And many people believe that religion is irrational and unscientific. They believe that as modernity and science progress, that religion will just fade away. Now, I'm going to complicate what we think we know about religion. I'm here to argue that religion is a social fact, and whether or not you believe in religion, it isn't going away anytime soon. In fact, religion is thriving, even under the worst of conditions like a pandemic. And while many think that religion and science are on opposite sides of the spectrum, I would argue that they're just asking different questions. As with any other aspect of human life, religion has its upsides and its downsides. It can offer hope, resilience, a warm and caring community during times of crisis, and it can be a vehicle for social and cultural conflict and injustice. Religion is actually many different things. And in an increasingly pluralistic world, we need to better understand religion as a social force and also as a philosophical lens to better understand human culture, human life, and ways we can thrive as a species in an unpredictable and imperfect world. As a point of reference, I grew up in a family that attended religious services on a regular basis, and it was a multicultural community. I think back on my experience with religion as being a positive one. It brings back memories of family and holidays, food drives and clothing drives, community, and positive feelings. My confusion with religion developed later in life when my husband and I embarked on an adventure with the Foreign Service. We lived in the Soviet Union during the fall of communism and later in the former Yugoslavia during the war. We arrived in Moscow in 1990, and after 70 years of Soviet communism, religion had been suppressed and even persecuted. It was seen as a competing source of legitimacy. Russian Orthodox churches and basilica, these beautiful buildings, were empty, and some had even been repurposed. I genuinely believed that religion, once it was pushed out of the public sphere, was gone forever. Well, no one could have predicted that just a few months later, during Gorbachev's efforts to restructure the economy and to open up society, that communism would fall. And the Soviet Union would splinter into 15 different independent republics. And just as surprising was the way that religion reemerged onto the public sphere. After extreme persecution, the Russian Orthodox Church rose up from the ashes of communism, almost like a phoenix, and soon it became a symbol of Russian national identity. Our next assignment was in the former Yugoslavia during the Balkans Crisis. The war was only 30 kilometers away from where we were living. And I can assure you, it was not easy to live near a war zone. When we first arrived, our welcoming committee told us that it wasn't worth unpacking our bags because we might actually be evacuated soon. Well, during the time that we were there, we met some of the wonderful people from the Balkans, the Muslims, the Croatian Catholics, the Serbian Orthodox, all wonderful people. And we heard their stories. Many of them had fled the war, and those stories kept us up at night. By this point, we had 2 toddlers, 2 little boys, and I worried, how would I protect them if the war came to our doorstep? Well, soon there was news of a ceasefire. In fact, the border had opened, and we knew that it probably wasn't going to be long before it closed again, so we packed up our little boys, put them in their car seats, and drove the 30 kilometers to the border, past checkpoints, past armed guards who stopped our car and looked through the window to see our little boys asleep in the back. And we drove slowly through the ruins of what used to be a thriving village, past homes that looked like our home, where families that were like us used to live. They were bombed and burned. Windows were shattered. Rain was pouring through holes in the roofs. In fact, it was such a rainy day, and the mist was coming up from the ruins almost like smoke. We drove back home to our safe place. We hugged our little boys. But experiencing this and witnessing with my own eyes the destruction that this conflict had caused was sobering. It hung over us like a dark cloud. I wondered, how could people who are so cultured and educated do this to one another? What role did religion or ethnicity play in this conflict? The answers were unclear, and the fog hovered. Secretly, I worried. Were all the positive things that I had experienced growing up with religion, were they true? Or was I just too young and naive to really understand the true character of religion? I felt like I was caught in a paradox. Eventually, cognitive dissonance set in, and I determined that religion was like a two-sided coin. On one hand, you have all the positive experiences with religion, and you flip it over, and you have the darker, more ominous side of religion. Eventually, we returned to the United States, and I began my doctorate. I joined Peter Berger at the Institute for Culture, Religion, and World Affairs at Boston University. I hoped Peter Berger, who was a well-known sociologist of religion, could wave a magic wand and clear the fog so I could see religion more clearly. He just smiled and said, I think it's your job to figure this out. So what have I learned about religion after meeting Peter Berger, after completing my research, after teaching? What I learned is religion is multifaceted. It's very complex. It takes on the characteristics of the societies it inhabits. It can be instrumentalized for human purposes. It also can advance social justice and the moral good. I also learned that religion is resilient. In fact, the pandemic showed us that. While human beings were social isolating, religion went online. You could attend Shabbat services and Friday prayers, Saturday and Sunday worship services, weddings, funerals, baptisms, and even a bris went online. I also learned that religion can contribute to human thriving. For instance, meditation and prayer have been found to reduce stress and to increase focus and even a sense of wellness. We know how important that is in today's world when mental health has been a crisis. Religion can also provide a supportive community when we lack resources, when we face discrimination or marginalization. From a functional perspective, religion is much like any other social force we experience. But through the process of teaching, I actually learned to appreciate the many different ways that religion understands human life, the human condition, suffering, and death. I also learned that religion is not so different from science. It's just asking different questions. Whereas science is asking the how. How was the universe formed? What is it composed of? How do we extend human life? Religion is asking the why. Why are we here? What is the meaning of life? What kind of life is worth living? To be clear, religions do answer these questions differently. Religions also provide unique ways of thinking about what we might call ultimate reality. For instance, Buddhists believe that the world around us, what we perceive, is actually just an illusion. Everything animate and inanimate is integrally connected because it all came from the same source. And everything is constantly changing. Well, I don't know about you, but it actually reminds me a bit of quantum mechanics. Theoretical physicist Carlo Rovelli, who, by the way, is not religious, argues that, quote, quantum mechanics describe a world that is deeply different from our experience. Nonetheless, it's real. In a sense, it's even more real than our experience, because our experience is like a foggy view of reality. So to some extent, physics is like taking away screens, he argues, and seeing better. So it's like walking over the hill and seeing what's beyond. Now, if I were to remove quantum mechanics and replace it with the word religion, this is what we get. Religion describes a world that is deeply different from our experience. Nevertheless, it's real. In a sense, it is more real than our experience. Our experience is like a foggy view of reality. So to some extent, religion is like taking away screens and seeing better. So it's like walking over the hill and seeing what's beyond. At its core, religion reminds us that we are just human beings after all, without divine powers and without total control over our environment or our circumstances, as the pandemic taught us so clearly. At its heart, religion is about compassion. We are called to treat one another as we would like to be treated. And while we don't have control over our circumstances, we do have control over how we respond to those circumstances. Religion tells us how, as a species, we can better flourish and respect our environment and the world around us. In an increasingly pluralistic world, when cohesive systems of thought are challenged daily by other worldviews and by other ideologies, it's vitally important that we learn to see human life from different perspectives through other ways of making sense of the human condition. So whether or not you believe in religion, religion is a social fact. It's not going away anytime soon. It's around us in all forms and shapes. Even during a pandemic or 70 years of Soviet communism, it didn't go away. As with quantum mechanics, religion gives us a view of reality that is different from the reality our physical senses perceive. I invite you to try on the lens that religion provides. I can't promise it will take away the screens to reveal an ultimate reality, but I'll wager it may give us new insights into our lived reality. Thank you.